The Galactic Security Council chamber floated in the dark void of space. A massive ring of metal and light that housed the most powerful beings in known space. And today, they gathered for what they believed would be. A simple matter. Ambassador Vexter stood at the center platform, his forearms gesturing to the holographic display that showed the small blue planet called Earth and the pitiful collection of ships humanity dared to call a fleet. 47 vessels, Vexter announced, his mandibles clicking with what passed for laughter among his kind. That is the sum total of human military power. The council members shifted in their seats, some amused and others simply bored by the proceedings. And why should they care about such an insignificant specialmech? The military coordinator brought up detailed scans of human technology, and the readouts made several council members laugh outright. They use kinetic weapons, Zalmek said with clear disdain. Metal slugs thrown through space like primitive arrows, and their ships have no energy shields. Only layers of metal plates. How quaint, remarked Council Member Thresh, her tentacles waving in amusement. Do they also fight with clubs and stones? More laughter echoed through the chamber. Vexter pulled up the comparison chart that showed the Council's fleet of 2,000 warships, each one bristling with plasma cannons and phase disruptors and protected by shields that could withstand the heat of a star. Our strategists have calculated the engagement timeline. Vexter continued, pulling up projection models. Human resistance will collapse within 3 to 4 hours of initial contact. That seems generous, Thresh said. I give them 2 hours at most. I wager 1 hour. Another council member called out. Shall we make this interesting? Vexter suggested. And several members began placing actual bets on how quickly the humans would surrender. Fleet Commander Dex Rao rose from his seat, a towering figure whose species had conquered 17 systems through military might, and he had personally overseen 12 successful invasions. I will deploy 500 ships for the initial wave, Dex Rao announced. The remaining 1,500 will stay in reserve, though I doubt we will meet them. Broadcasting the invasion, suggested Zalmek. Let other fringe species see what happens when they defy the council. The motion passed unanimously deep in the outer solar system. Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the carrier Liberty, staring at the message that had just arrived from the Galactic Council. He was a man in his 50s with gray hair and tired eyes, a veteran of conflicts that seemed small now compared to what was coming. Final ultimatum, Morrison read aloud. Surrender all outer colonies within 12 hours or face complete military annexation. Captain Lisa Chun stood beside him, her dark hair pulled back in a regulation bun, and her face showing the strain of 3 sleepless nights spent preparing defenses. Admiral, we should at least try to negotiate, Chun urged. Maybe buy more time for the colonies to evacuate. Morrison looked at her with something like sadness in his eyes. They are not interested in negotiation, Captain, and they have already decided we are too weak to matter. Lieutenant Commander Ryan Parker worked at the tactical station, his fingers flying over the controls as he compiled every scrap of data they had on Council military capabilities. Sir, the numbers are not in our favor, Parker said. Though Morrison already knew this, they have better weapons, better shields, and better everything. Except determination, Morrison replied. And he began drafting his response to the Council's ultimatum. The message he sent was short, just 3 words that would echo across the galaxy in the days to come. Come and take them on the Council station. Vexter received the human response and shared it with the assembled members. The chamber erupted in laughter once again. They actually believe they can resist, Thresh said between fits of amusement. How wonderfully naive. Dexrol, however, did not laugh, and he had seen too many battles to dismiss any enemy completely. But even his caution had limits. Deploy the first wave immediately, Dexrol ordered, and broadcast everything so the galaxy can witness Council justice. 500 gleaming warships began their jump to the human solar system, and each ship was 3 times larger than the biggest human vessel and carried enough firepower to level a continent. The council members settled into their seats to watch the show, confident they would be having dinner before the humans stopped fighting. Morrison gathered his command staff in the Liberty's briefing room. "They are coming," he announced. "Intelligence suggests 500 ships in the first wave." The room went silent. Chen closed her eyes for a moment, and Parker's hands stopped moving over his datapad. "We have 47 ships," Morrison continued, "and most of them are destroyers and frigates. Not capital ships. It is suicide," someone whispered. "No," Morrison said firmly. "It is war, and we will fight it the only way we know how." He pulled up the tactical display showing the outer solar system. "Captain Brandon Hayes will take 12 ships to Neptune Station," Morrison explained. "That is where they will arrive, far enough out to think they are safe." Hayes nodded from his position at the back of the room, and he was young for a captain. Only 32, but he had proven himself in the colony skirmishes. "Use the moons. Use the gravity well and use everything Neptune can give you," Morrison instructed. "Make them think twice about easy victories." "And the rest of us?" Chun asked. "We consolidate at Mars and prepare for round 2, Morrison said. "Because when Hayes bloodies their nose, they will come at us with everything." "Sir," Parker spoke up, "our weapons are primitive compared to theirs, and our ships have no shields." "True," Morrison agreed. "But our weapons work, and theirs have never faced kinetic penetrators at relativistic speeds." He looked around the room at the faces of men and women who knew they might not survive the coming days. "The Council thinks this will be over in hours," Morrison said quietly. "Let us teach them that humans do not surrender." In the Council chamber, the viewing screen showed the first wave emerging from faster than light. Travel near Neptune, and the alien ships formed perfect battle lines, their hulls gleaming with power. "Contact in 30 minutes, announced the tactical observer. Vexither leaned back in his seat. "Already bored. Wake me when they surrender," he said. Fell watched the screens more carefully, and something about the human silence bothered him. But he dismissed the feeling. 12 human ships broke from cover around Neptune's moons and immediately opened fire without warning and without any attempt to communicate. "They attack," an observer said with surprise. The council members stopped their conversations to watch. Captain Brandon Hayes stood on the bridge of his destroyer Valiant, watching the alien fleet grow larger on the screens. "All ships, weapons free," Hayes ordered calmly. "Show them what Earth is made of." Nuclear-tipped missiles streaked across the dark. Space and railguns fired solid slugs, accelerated to impossible speeds. The aliens had never seen weapons like these. Their shields flickered and failed as kinetic energy punched through energy barriers designed to stop plasma and lasers. The first council ship to die was named Glorious Dawn, and it broke apart in a silent explosion that painted the void with fire. In the council chamber, the laughter stopped. The Battle of Mars orbit began with a fury that dwarfed the Neptune engagement and 800 alien warships versus 35 human vessels. But the humans had learned from the first battle, and so had their enemy's commander. Crevoium divided his fleet into 3 battle groups, and each group approached Mars from a different angle, preventing the humans from concentrating their fire. "Clever," Admiral Morrison admitted from the Liberty's bridge. "They learned not to bunch up." Captain Lisa Chun coordinated the human response, and their ships formed a defensive sphere around Mars, using the planet's gravity and the debris field from the destroyed colony stations as tactical advantages. "Battlegroup Alpha is targeting our left flank," Lieutenant Commander Ryan Parker reported. "Shift destroyers Hayes and Martinez to intercept." Morrison ordered, "Tell them to use the Phobos passage." the two destroyers accelerated toward. Mars' inner moon and alien fire lit up space around them, but the human ships were smaller and faster, dodging between obstacles that the massive alien dreadnoughts could not navigate. Lieutenant Nicole Ramirez launched from the Liberty with her fighter wing and 48 small craft against an armada. But she had a plan. "Delta Squadron, stay tight on me," Ramirez transmitted. "We are going for their command ship." Her fighters dove into the alien formation, and point defense fire created a web of death that 3 fighters did not survive, but the rest pushed through. Ramirez identified the flagship by its size and the formation pattern of ships protecting it, and she armed her experimental plasma charges, the ones Chief Amanda Foster had modified to overload alien shield generators. "One shot," Ramirez whispered to herself as she dodged incoming fire. She released the charge at point-blank range and then pulled up so hard the G-forces nearly made her black out. The charge struck the flagship's shield, and instead of dispersing, it created a feedback loop, and the shield collapsed inward, crushing the emitter arrays. "Shields down on the flagship," Parker shouted from the Liberty. "All ships focus fire." Morrison commanded 20 human vessels turned their weapons on the vulnerable flagship and railgun rounds, missiles, and the 3 precious plasma cannons Foster had installed all struck simultaneously. The flagship broke apart, and Cree volume barely escaped in an evacuation pod without central coordination. The alien battle groups began making independent decisions, and that was exactly what Morrison had hoped for. Captain Brandon Hayes led a strike group of 6 destroyers in a bold maneuver, and they burned hard toward Battle Group Beta, the one protecting the alien left flank. "They will think we are fleeing," Hayes told his tactical officer. "Let them think that." The aliens took the bait, and 10 enemy ships broke formation to pursue Hayes. Now, Hayes ordered his destroyers flipped and fired every weapon simultaneously at point-blank range, and the pursuing aliens had no time to react as tungsten rounds punched through their hulls. Hayes lost 2 ships in the exchange, but destroyed all 10 pursuers on the Liberty. Chief Foster directed damage control teams as the carrier took repeated hits, and 1 plasma blast melted through the port armor and killed 12 crew members. "Reroute power from secondary systems," Foster ordered, even as tears ran down her face for the lost crew. "Keep the weapons online." The battle raged for 8 hours without pause. Human crews fought in shifts and sleeping in their stations between alerts and eating ration bars while manning guns. The aliens expected human exhaustion to be a factor, but Morrison had planned for sustained combat, and his crews had trained for this, rotating so that fresh eyes always watched the tactical displays. Captain Chris Matthews commanded the frigate Defiant, and his ship had taken so much damage that life support was failing, and the main reactor was close to critical failure. "Captain, we need to abandon ship," his executive officer urged. Matthews looked at the tactical display and saw an alien dreadnought bearing down on a cluster of wounded human vessels. "Negative," Matthews said calmly. "Plot a collision course with that dreadnought." "Sir." "That is suicide?" "That is an order." Matthews evacuated all non-essential personnel in the escape pods, and then strapped himself into the captain's chair with the 15 crew members who volunteered to stay. The Defiant accelerated to maximum velocity, and the damaged frigate screaming toward the dreadnought. Aliens saw them coming and tried to shoot the ship down, but the Defiant's armor, riddled with holes as it was, held together long enough. Matthews rammed the dreadnought at full speed, and the explosion vaporized both ships instantly. In that moment, 16 humans died, and 3,000 aliens perished with them. But the dreadnought had been about to destroy the destroyer cluster, and Matthews saved 200 human lives with his sacrifice. Morrison witnessed the collision and felt something break inside his chest. "Note the time," he said quietly to Parker. "Captain Matthews and crew, killed in action. Highest honors." The sacrifice had an unexpected effect on the human fleet, and every ship fought harder, knowing that Matthews had shown them what true courage meant. Led a counterattack that destroyed 30 alien vessels in 2 hours, and her tactics were so aggressive that the aliens began to fear engaging her ship. The Liberty's captain fights like a demon. One alien commander reported to Volume, watched from his rescue ship as his fleet gradually disintegrated under human attacks, had studied human warfare and thought he understood it, but understanding and experiencing were different. Thinks these humans did not fight for territory or resources, and they fought for survival. And that made them more dangerous than any enemy he had faced. They will not stop. Volume told his aide, even if we destroy 90% of their fleet, the last ship will still attack. Should we retreat? The aide asked Ed Volume made the hardest decision of his military career. Signal all battle groups to withdraw. The alien fleet began jumping back to faster than light and leaving behind the hulks of 312 destroyed vessels. Human losses were severe and 18 ships destroyed and every surviving vessel damaged to some degree. But they had won again. Morrison stood on the Liberty's scorched bridge and looked at his exhausted crew. Get me casualty reports, he ordered, though he dreaded the numbers. 1,500 personnel killed in action. Parker reported quietly. Another 800 wounded. Morrison closed his eyes. And the aliens estimated 12,000 killed based on ship losses. Council chamber was chaos. Vexter faced calls for his immediate removal, and Thress demanded investigations. We have lost over 600 ships to humans. One council member shouted, "How is this possible?" Volume appeared via hologram, and his image flickered as he spoke from his rescue vessel. "I will tell you how," Volume said, and his voice carried the weight of hard experience. Humans are apex persistence predators, and they evolved fighting, and they will not surrender, even when logic says they should. Then we deploy everything. Vexter declared, "Our remaining 1,200 ships plus all reserves. That is our entire military." Thress protested. "Exactly," Vexter said. "We end this now before more species see our weakness." The vote passed on Mars. Morrison received intelligence about the coming assault. 1,200 ships. Chun said in disbelief, "We have 23 damaged vessels left." Morrison looked at Earth on the view screen, and that small blue world that had spawned a species too stubborn to quit. "Send a message to Earth," Morrison ordered. "Request all available civilian ships." "Sir." "Civilian vessels are not combat ready." "Neither were we," Morrison replied. "But we learned, and they will too." Within 48 hours, 89 civilian ships arrived, and mining haulers, cargo transports, and colony vessels, all armed with whatever weapons their crews could install. Captain Danny Rodriguez commanded the ore hauler. Phoenix and his ship carried a mining laser that could cut through asteroids. "Never thought I would fight aliens," Rodriguez said to his crew of miners and mechanics. "Never thought we would win." His first mate replied, "But they came anyway," and Earth prepared for its final stand. The Battle of Neptune Station lasted 6 brutal hours and changed everything the Council thought they knew about warfare. Captain Brandon Hayes watched his tactical display light up with targeting solutions as his 12 ships danced between Neptune's 14 moons. Using the celestial bodies as cover and confusion, the alien fleet commander sent another surrender demand, and Hayes deleted it without reading. His focus entirely on the next attack run. "Delta Wing, hit their left flank," Hayes ordered. "Gamma Wing, prepare nuclear spread on my mark." Commander Kevin Walsh led Delta Wing. 3 destroyers that shrieked from behind Triton's bulk and opened fire with railguns spitting tungsten penetrators at a significant fraction of light speed. The aliens had shields. Yes, but those shields were designed to disperse energy weapons and kinetic rounds. Simply punched through like rocks through paper. Walsh watched with grim satisfaction as his rounds tore into an alien cruiser's engine section. and the ship began tumbling, leaking atmosphere and fuel. Gamma Wing. Mark. Hayes called 6 nuclear missiles, launched simultaneously from different positions, and the aliens tried to shoot them down with point defense. But the missiles came from too many angles. 3 warheads detonated against alien hulls, and in space there was no shockwave, no mushroom cloud, just instant vaporization of metal and a flash of fusion fire. The Council fleet tried to adapt, and they spread their formation, attempting to reduce the effectiveness of area weapons, but spreading out meant individual ships became vulnerable, and Hayes exploited this immediately. All ships, break into hunter groups, he commanded. Pick your targets and stay mobile. The human vessels split into pairs and began harassing different sections of the alien fleet. Lieutenant Nicole Ramirez flew her fighter through the debris field that was already forming, and her squadron of 20 small craft buzzed around the massive alien dreadnoughts like angry hornets. They are trying to target us, her wingman reported as energy blasts lit up the void around them. Too slow, Ramirez replied, threading her fighter between 2 chunks of destroyed hull. These big ships cannot track small fast movers. She armed her plasma charges, reverse engineered from alien tech they had captured in previous border skirmishes, and dove toward an alien carrier. The charge attached to the hull, and Ramirez was already accelerating away when it detonated, blowing a hole in the carrier's flight deck. Alien fighters began spilling out, tumbling without launch control on the Liberty. Admiral Morrison watched the Neptune battle through real-time feeds, and his heart was heavy with each human ship that died, but also swelling with pride at their courage. Hayes has destroyed 47 enemy vessels, Parker reported. But we have lost 3 ships, Morrison nodded, and those losses hurt. But the numbers told a story the Council had not expected. Order all reserve ships to Mars orbit, Morrison commanded. Consolidate the fleet and prepare for the next wave. Captain Lisa Chun coordinated the movement of 23 human vessels toward Mars, and many of them bore scars from previous engagements, their hulls patched and their crews exhausted. Engineering teams report they can retrofit 3 ships with captured plasma cannons, Chun informed Morrison. Chief Amanda Foster says they have figured out the alien power systems. How long? Morrison asked. 48 hours if we push hard. Do it, Morrison ordered. We use every advantage we can steal. At Neptune, the alien fleet finally broke, and the survivors jumped back to faster than light, leaving behind 312 destroyed or disabled vessels. Hayes counted his remaining ships, and he had lost 5 more in the final push, bringing human losses to 8 ships total. Valiant to all ships, Hayes transmitted. Fall back to Mars and prepare for round 2. His crew cheered despite their exhaustion, and they had faced 500 alien warships and driven them off in the Council chamber. There was no laughter now. Vexter stood frozen, staring at casualty reports that should not exist. 312 ships, he repeated numbly, destroyed by 12 human vessels. Dexraw had been replaced already, and the disgraced fleet commander sat in a detention cell, waiting for trial. Commander Crevolume now held military authority, and he was older than Dexraw, a veteran of the brutal Rithan wars where his species had learned that technology alone did not win battles. Bring me everything we know about human history, Crevolume ordered his staff. What he found disturbed him greatly. Humans had been fighting wars for their entire existence, and every year of human history contained conflict somewhere. On their planet, they evolved on a world of extreme weather, dangerous predators, and constant environmental challenges. Death world survivors, Crevolume muttered, using the term for species that evolved in the fear, harshest conditions. He pulled up human military doctrine and found concepts that made no sense to Council. Thinking humans rotated crews to maintain constant alertness, and they accepted casualties as inevitable. and they adapted tactics in real time during battle. They learn while fighting. Crevoium said to his second-in-command, "We plan before fighting. They plan during. What do you recommend?" His aide Asked Crevolum looked at the tactical projections, and the council still had over 1,600 ships. Massive numerical superiority. We deploy 800 vessels in 3 separate battle groups, Crevolume decided. And we do not underestimate them again. The council convened for emergency session. We need to crush them now, Vexter demanded, his earlier confidence replaced by fear. Before other species see this as weakness. Agreed, Thress said. Her tentacles coiled tight with stress. Deploy overwhelming force. Crevolume presented his battle plan, and the council approved it unanimously. 800 ships jumped toward Marson the Liberty. Alarms blared as sensors detected the incoming fleet. Contact in 6 hours, Parker announced. His voice tight. Morrison looked at his assembled forces and 35 military vessels, many damaged. Plus the 3 ships Foster's team had retrofitted with alien weapons. Not enough, Chum said quietly. Never is, Morrison replied. But it is what we have. He activated fleet-wide communications. All ships. This is Admiral Morrison, and in 6 hours we face 800 enemy vessels. And I will not lie to you. The odds are terrible. He paused, gathering his thoughts. But those aliens expected us to surrender without fighting, and they expected easy victory at Neptune, and Captain Hayes proved them wrong. Morrison could see the faces of his crew on the bridge. Young men and women who had volunteered to defend Earth. They think we are primitive, and maybe we are. But we are also human. And that means we do not quit, and we do not surrender, and we sure as hell do not go quietly. Across the fleet, crews shouted approval. Battle stations in 5 hours, Morrison ordered. Get what rest you can and kiss the person next to you. Because we are about to show these aliens what humans do when pushed to the wall. Chief Amanda Foster worked frantically in the Liberty's engineering bay, installing the last plasma cannon on the destroyer Ranger. This should work, she told the ship's captain. Just do not overload it or the whole power grid will fry. Noted. The captain replied. Foster moved to the next ship, and her team had barely slept in 3 days, surviving on stimulants and determination at Neptune. The debris field floated silent, and testament to the cost of underestimating humanity. And on Mars, 35 human ships formed battle lines and, waiting for 800 alien warships to arrive. Morrison stood on the Liberty's bridge as the alien fleet dropped out of faster than light travel. Here they come, Parker said. The alien ships filled the view screen, a massive wall of metal and energy. All ships, Morrison transmitted. Fire at will. The second battle had begun. The civilian fleet gathered at Mars and 89 ships that had never been designed for combat now bristled with improvised weapons and desperate courage. Chief Amanda Foster moved from ship to ship, and her engineering teams working around the foe clock to install anything that could hurt an alien vessel. This mining laser can cut through 3 meters of solid rock, Captain Danny Rodriguez explained as Foster examined his ore hauler Phoenix. Then it can cut through alien hulls. Foster replied, "We just need to get you close enough." How close? Very close. Rodriguez nodded, and he had spent 20 years hauling ore through the asteroid belt, and he knew how to fly in tight spaces. Lieutenant Maria Santos coordinated the civilian fleet and trying to organize merchant captains and mining operators into something resembling a military formation. Most of you have never fired a weapon in anger, Santos told the assembled civilian commanders via video conference. And your ships are not armored, and you have families aboard some vessels. She paused and looking at faces that showed fear but also determination. I cannot promise you will survive. Santis continued. But I can promise that if you run, Earth will fall and everyone you love will be at the mercy of the Council. We are not running, Rodriguez said firmly. And other voices echoed agreement. Admiral Morrison addressed both military and civilian fleets together in 12 hours. 1,200 alien warships will arrive, Morrison announced. They expect to destroy us completely, and maybe they will. But we will make them pay for every meter of space. He pulled up the tactical display. Military vessels will form the outer shell, Morrison explained. Civilians will hold the inner positions around Earth itself. Sir, that puts us in the safest position, Rodriguez protested. We should be fighting too. You will be fighting, Morrison assured him. When the military line breaks, and it will break, you will be Earth's last defense. The words hung heavy in the air. Captain Lisa Chun worked with Lieutenant Commander Ryan Parker to finalize defensive positions, and every ship placed where it could do the most damage. We should evacuate Earth. Chun suggested quietly to Morrison. Get civilians off-world. To where? Morrison asked. The Council will hunt them down, and besides, humans do not abandon home. Chun understood, and she had grown up on Earth and walked in forests and swam in oceans. If this was where humanity made its stand, so be it. Captain Brandon Hayes gathered his remaining destroyer captains. We are the tip of the spear, Hayes told them. We hit first and hit hard, and we make them think twice before they push forward. And when they push anyway, someone asked, we fall back and make them pay for every kilometer. Hayes looked at his fellow captains and these men and women who had faced impossible odds. Already, I am proud to serve with you, Hayes said simply. Lieutenant Nicole Ramirez briefed. Her fighter pilots and 48 craft remained from the original 96. They will have learned to track us better. Ramirez warned, expect more accurate point defense. Then we fly more erratically, her wingman suggested. Exactly, Ramirez agreed. Stay unpredictable and stay alive. Chief Foster completed the last weapon installation on a civilian transport. This plasma cannon has a 50-50 chance of exploding when you fire it, Foster told the captain honestly. And if I do not fire it, we all die anyway. The captain laughed grimly and accepted the odds on the Council station. Vexter watched the fleet assemble in 1,200 ships. Every vessel the Council could muster. This ends today. Vexter declared. Commander Crevolium led the fleet personally, and his new flagship was the Eternal Dominion, and the largest warship ever built by the Council. All vessels, prepare for jump, Crevolium ordered. He felt no satisfaction in this command, and he had studied human courage and found it admirable even as he prepared to destroy them. Why do they not surrender? His aide wondered. Aloud, because they are human, Crevolium replied. And that means surrender is not in their nature. The massive fleet jumped alarms, screamed across the human fleet as sensors detected the incoming armada. Contact in 30 minutes. Parker announced. Morrison took a deep breath, and this was it. Everything they had fought for came down to the next few hours. All ships, battle stations, Morrison commanded. And may whatever gods you believe in be with us. The human fleet was ready, and 23 military vessels in the outer shell and 89 civilian ships protecting Earth itself, and they waited. The alien fleet emerged from faster than light in a massive wall of ships that seemed to blot out the stars. 1,200 vessels versus 112 human ships. Crevolium sent one final message. Humans, you have fought bravely, but this is over, and surrender now, and we will grant you mercy. Morrison's response was broadcast across all channels. Earth stands. 2 simple words that carried the weight of human defiance. Secretary of all side. All ships, commence attack. The alien fleet advanced, and their weapons creating a web of deadly energy. Across space haze led the outer defense and his destroyers launching. Everything they had nuclear missiles streaked toward the alien line, and railguns fired in coordinated volleys, but there were too many aliens, and for every ship the humans destroyed, 10 more pushed forward. Outer line is falling back. Parker reported Morrison watched his tactical display and seeing human ships winking out one by one. Tell them to fall back to the civilian line, Morrison ordered. Though each word hurt to say, Hayes' destroyer took a direct hit, and his shields, such as they were, collapsed and plasma burned through the whole abandoned ship. Hayes ordered his crew, but before they could reach the escape pods, another blast hit the engine room. The destroyer exploded, and Hayes and 63 crew members died instantly. Chen saw the explosion and felt tears burn her eyes. But there was no time for grief. All ships, concentrate fire on Sector 7, Chen commanded, taking over tactical coordination. Civilian fleet opened fire, and mining lasers that could cut asteroids now carved through alien hulls at close range. Rodriguez brought the Phoenix in dangerously close to an alien cruiser and fired his laser at point-blank range. The beam burned completely through the cruiser, destroying the ship's reactor. The cruiser exploded, and the shockwave damaged the Phoenix, but Rodriguez's ship held together, one down. Rodriguez called out triumphantly, but then something unexpected happened. 3 ships appeared at the edge of the battle, and ships that wore no council markings, unknown vessels entering combat zone. Parker reported the new ships opened fire on the council fleet. Who are they? Morrison demanded. Telvan Confederacy, Parker said with surprise. They are neutral. Not anymore. Chum said the Telvan ships were smaller than council vessels, but their weapons were precise and deadly. Telvan Commander Sivanal broadcast on open channels. The Telvan Confederacy has watched humanity fight with honor and courage, and we will not stand by while the council commits this injustice. We are not alone, Morrison said with wonder. Other neutral species heard the Telvan broadcast, and 6 more ships arrived. Then 12, then 20. The council fleet found itself fighting not just humans but a growing coalition. Krievol realized the battle had become something more than military conflict, and it had become political disaster. If we continue, we start a galactic war. His aide, Warwick Krivolum, looked at the tactical display and at the human ships still fighting despite impossible losses. He thought about the council's arrogance and about how badly they had misjudged this species. All ships, cease fire, Krivolum ordered. Sir, his aide protested. I said cease fire, Krivolum repeated firmly. We have already lost this war. The alien fleet stopped shooting, and for a moment the humans continued firing. Not believing the reprieve then, Morrison ordered his fleet to hold fire. Silence fell across the battlefield, and broken only by the crackling of damaged ships and the hiss of leaking atmosphere. This is Commander Krivolum, the alien leader broadcast. We request terms of surrender. Morrison could hardly believe what he was hearing. The council was surrendering. Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Liberty and stared at the message from Commander Krivolum. Unable to fully process the words, the council was surrendering. Captain Lisa Chen stood beside him, and her face showing the same shock that Morrison felt. Is this real? Chen asked quietly. Lieutenant Commander Ryan. Parker checked the transmission 3 times before answering. The message is authentic. Sir, and all council ships have powered down their weapons. Morrison looked at the tactical display, and the battlefield was littered with debris and damaged vessels, and the bodies of thousands who had died on both sides. Open a channel to Krivolum, Morrison ordered. The alien commander appeared on screen, and his alien features showing what Morrison recognized as exhaustion and resignation. We request terms, Krivolum said formally. Morrison thought about Captain Brandon Hayes, who died defending the outer line, and about Captain Chris Matthews, who sacrificed himself to save others, and about the 1,500 human personnel killed in action. He thought about demanding retribution and about making the council pay for every human life lost, but he also thought about what kind of galaxy humanity wanted to live in. All council vessels will withdraw beyond the orbit of Jupiter, Morrison stated. You will leave behind sufficient ships to recover your wounded and dead, and we will do the same. Crevolium nodded slowly. You grant us mercy, the alien commander said with what sounded like surprise. We grant you the same terms we would want. Morrison replied, We are not conquerors, Commander, and we only wanted to be left alone. That is now clear, Crevolium acknowledged. The council fleet began its withdrawal and leaving behind medical ships and rescue craft. Chief Amanda Foster organized recovery operations, and her teams working alongside alien rescue workers to save lives from damaged vessels. Strange, Foster said to her assistant as they pulled an injured alien from a wrecked ship. A few hours ago, we were trying to kill each other. War is strange, her assistant agreed. Captain Danny Rodriguez brought the Phoenix alongside a disabled council vessel and helped evacuate the alien crew. Why do you help us? The alien captain asked. Rodriguez, because the fighting is over, Rodriguez replied simply, and because your crew deserves to live just like mine does. The alien captain looked at Rodriguez with something that might have been respect on Earth. News of the victory spread, and people poured into the streets and celebrating and crying and holding each other. But in the fleet, there were no celebrations. Lieutenant Nicole Ramirez sat in her fighter and looking at the empty pilots' seats around her, and half her squadron was gone. Lieutenant Maria Santos compiled the final casualty list, and 71 military vessels destroyed, 34 civilian ships lost, and over 3,000 human deaths. The cost of victory was written in blood. The Galactic Security Council convened an emergency session, and this time they met on their homeworlds via hologram rather than risk gathering in one place. We have lost 1,206 ships, Baxter announced numbly. Nearly our entire military, and gained nothing. Thress added bitterly. Worse than nothing, another council member said. 6 species have broken treaties with us, and the Telvan Confederacy has formed an alliance with humans. The political fallout was immediate and catastrophic. 3 council members resigned in disgrace, and Vexter faced criminal charges from his own government for leading them into disaster. The council itself was dissolved within a week and replaced by a reformed assembly that included representatives from species who had previously been excluded. Commander Crevolium testified before multiple inquiries. We underestimated them in every way. Crevolium told the tribunal. We assumed primitive technology meant primitive thinking, and we were catastrophically wrong. They fought with honor. Crevolium continued, even in victory. Admiral Morrison showed mercy when he could have demanded our complete destruction. The testimony changed how many species viewed humanity 1 month after the battle. Morrison stood at the dedication ceremony for Earth Memorial Station and the massive structure floating in Mars orbit. The memorial listed every human who died defending Earth, and 3,147 names carved in metal that would last forever. We gather to honor those who gave everything. Morrison spoke to the assembled survivors. They fought not for conquest, but for the simple right to exist and to be free. He looked out at the crowd and saw Chief Foster with her engineering teams, and Captain Rodriguez and his civilian volunteers, and Lieutenant Ramirez and her surviving pilots. They won more than a battle. Morrison continued. They won humanity's place in the galaxy, and they showed that courage and determination matter more than superior technology. Captain Chun now served as Earth's first official ambassador to the reformed Galactic Assembly. She stood before representatives of 40 species, and many of whom had never taken humanity seriously. Before Earth seeks peace, Chun told the Assembly, but we will never surrender our freedom, and we will defend ourselves and our allies with every resource we have. The galaxy has seen what happens when you underestimate humans, she continued. We hope you have learned from the Council's mistake. The Assembly voted to grant Earth full membership and equal status with species who had been spacefaring for thousands of years. Lieutenant Commander Parker became director of the new Earth Defense Academy and training the next generation of officers on the lessons learned from the war. The Council had better ships, Parker told his students, better weapons and better shields, and so why did we win? A young cadet raised her hand. Because we refused to lose. Sir, exactly, Parker agreed. Never forget that determination can overcome almost any advantage. Admiral Morrison retired from active duty but remained as a consultant to Earth's military. He spent his days writing letters to the families of the fallen and making sure their sacrifices were never forgotten. 1 year after the battle, Morrison received an unexpected visitor. Commander Crevolume came to Earth as part of a diplomatic mission from his species. I wanted to meet you in person, Crevolume said when they met in Morrison's modest home. Why? Morrison asked. To understand the man who defeated the greatest military force in the galaxy. Crevolume replied. They talked for hours, and about war and peace, and about the nature of courage. What you did was remarkable, Crevolume said, fighting against odds that no sane commander would accept. We had no choice, Morrison replied. Surrender meant the end of human independence. So you chose to fight knowing you would likely die. We chose to fight knowing we would rather die free than live as subjects. Crevolume was silent for a moment. My species has learned much from yours, the alien commander finally said, about determination and about the value of mercy and victory. And we learned that the galaxy is bigger than we imagined, Morrison replied. Full of species we can work with and learn from. They shook hands, human and alien. Former enemies now working toward peace in the years that followed. Humanity expanded cautiously into the galaxy. New colonies were founded, and new alliances formed. Earth became known not for conquest, but for resilience, and not for aggression, but for the courage to stand firm when threatened. The phrase, Earth stands, became famous across the galaxy and a reminder that even the smallest species could not be intimidated or conquered if they refused to give up. And whenever young humans asked Morrison what made the difference in the war, he always gave the same answer. We did not win because we were stronger, and we won because we refused to lose. And we won because we were human, and being human means never surrendering your freedom. The Council had predicted human defeat and ours instead. Humanity had crushed every fleet they sent, and doing so, humanity had earned something more valuable than victory. They had earned respect.